Alright, so today we're going to finish these two sides and maybe even do some more on the back. But first we're going to start with a pyramid. So we're going to draw a triangle on this side. If you can, try to draw it lightly at first. Now the triangle is just one side of that pyramid. But right now it looks like it's sitting up. We're going to make it look like it's leaning back after we start doing some shading. So I'm going to do a diagonal line on this corner here. And that's going to be the bottom right side of the pyramid. And then we're going to draw from this top. I'm going to draw a nice diagonal line coming down to that line we just drew. And now it totally changed the look of our pyramid. Now we're going to do a similar thing like we did here, except we're going to shade, and it's going to be slightly darker on the bottom, and it's going to get a little lighter at the top, and that'll help with the realism of the look of the pyramid. Now, so I'm going to start shading this. I like to hold my pencil away from the end, from the lead. That way I'm not pushing down too hard. And then shade the whole thing like about a 2 or a 3. So it probably looks like I'm barely doing anything right now. I'm just trying to get my rhythm going. Now whatever angle you want to do it in, it's fine. Just make sure it's fairly even for now. You can always go back in and fill in the areas you're not happy with. As long as you do it lightly, you should be able to fill it in okay. I'm going to focus on this bottom edge here. So now I'm going to darken this up just a little bit on the bottom, because I want it to be just a little bit darker on the bottom than the top. The reason is because this pyramid, wherever it might be, it sometimes gets reflected light from all around this area, and it has less area up here to block light, so it's going to look a little bit lighter up there, at least in this scenario. So there we go. Oh, I'm getting a little scribbly on my shading. I gotta watch myself. Try not to push down too hard. Easy does it. Alright, so for the right side, we're going to darken that up darker than this side, because the light source, again, is going to be from the left side. That's light source, not left side. Oh, you can't even see that, can you? Alright, so this side here is going to be a little bit darker. Remember, try to make it nice and even. Easy does it. Start off fairly light and work your way back to a darker shade. That way you can always decide, oh, I went too light, I can always darken it up. And then once again, also the trick is trying to make everything look fairly even in here. Same thing, I'm going to try to leave it a little bit lighter on the top, but it should be still darker than the front part of the pyramid. Now if you had a real picture of a pyramid, you might have some textures or, you know, different shading going on, like a shadow or something, depending on how the light is hitting and what is around the pyramid too. Alright, so I'm going to work on this bottom. I'm going to change the angle of my pencil. And then blend this up a little bit more. Alright, so that's probably pretty close. I could probably work on this bit longer and get it perfect. Now the shadow. The shadow is going to reflect the shape of your pyramid. So it's going to be pointy. Now depending on the angle of this, it's going to be either shorter or longer or squishier. Let's see, so if it's coming from over here, we got a nice dark area over here. It's going to come this way a little bit. You can make it a little bit longer. So if I do it here, then that means if you draw a line from the point to this point, that's the direction that the sun is coming down. Alright, now remember, we're going to make it darker at the edge of the ground. And then it's going to get a little bit lighter as it goes out. We want it to look like a shadow. Sometimes strong light makes really dark, strong line shadows. But when you have a lot of light reflecting, like say if this was just a block from your wooden block set or something, it might have reflected light from different light sources, and the shadow wouldn't be as strong. You can always erase the edges if you want them to be a little more sharp. By sharp, I mean they look like a nice solid line and not too fuzzy looking. You get fuzzy shadows sometimes when you have lots of lights on in the house, or like in the classroom where we have all those lights on. You get fuzzy shadows sometimes. Or you get multiple shadows. I don't know if I have multiple shadows. I have kind of multiple shadows. I actually have 2 lights on in here. Alright, so I made my edges a little fuzzy. If you decide I don't like my fuzzy edges, you can just erase carefully, nice and straight. Try not to go inside your shadow to ruin all that work you did. You want the shadow to look like it's coming from under the object. There we go. Now remember, I said you could use a piece of paper to put underneath your hand if you think you're getting your hand in there and smudging graphite all over your hand. But that's our pyramid. For the next one, this one's going to be a little harder. We're going to make a cylinder. So we're going to start with an oval right towards the top here. Not all the way to the top, obviously. So just a nice squishy oval. Oop, got to make that side a little better. The oval on the top, that's going to be the opening. If you had a cup, it would be the opening right in here. Or if it's a cylinder, that'd just be the top of your cylinder. Now it's not the best oval, that's okay. Now we're going to make a straight line on the left and a straight line on the right. Make sure it's fairly even and parallel. And then on the bottom, we're going to copy the bottom edge, not the top edge at all. We don't need that at all. Only where it touches, the line touches the oval right there, that's where you're going to start drawing the same shape right here. So it comes down and curves back up and then curves in. As a matter of fact, I can go back in and fix this a little bit if I'm not happy there. So that's a little better. And as long as you draw fairly light, you should always be able to erase without leaving too much pencil line behind. Once it happens, a lot of people are concentrating really hard and they're pressing down with their pencil too hard, and you end up with lines that leave a mark on the paper and you can't erase it. Now I'm not using a pad of paper, so it's just my drawing board underneath, and it doesn't leave too much of a dent in my paper. Once again, light source shining down from the left. Now this one's going to be a little trickier. You're going to shade the right side first, And then you're going to skip a little section right about it here for reflected light. And then you're going to start shading again. And then you're going to do all this in the gradual shading. Alright, so it needs to look like it's gradually getting from dark to light. And then we're going to do the same thing over here on the left edge. We're going to gradually shade that just a little tiny bit, just to give us that illusion that it's round. Alright, we're going to leave the top white for now. I don't think we need to shade it. We could. Alright, so here's how it goes. You're going to carefully start shading the right side. Remember, build it in layers. And you're very, very quickly getting light. Now we're only going to do about 1/4 of an inch. Now my pencil's not very sharp, which is probably why I'm getting soft edges for the most part. That's almost 1/4 of an inch. Hang on, let me fix this up so it's about 1/4 of an inch. Now it's kind of a sharp edge right there. There we go, that's better. I was out of focus. Now I'm going to skip another 1/4 of an inch and start right about here and start shading. Once again, from dark to light. So I'm going to go almost the same as this because we're going to darken that up later. And now from now on, you want to go lighter and lighter and lighter. So right about here, about 1/2 of an inch almost away from the edge. Now, obviously, you're going to have to look at what I'm doing and try to copy it, because you might have made yours bigger or smaller. So when I say 1/2 of an inch, yours maybe is 1/4 of an inch, or maybe it's an inch. I don't know. Depends on how big you made it. Probably won't be an inch because we don't have very much space in these little things. So see how that's getting lighter the more I get to the left side? You want it to go all the way to white right about here. Now that's what's called a highlight. When you have a white area on an object that's shining back at you the brightest, that is usually the highlight. The highlights shine brightest. That's why when people highlight things, they make it stand out or make it bright. Alright, so we're going to do a little shading on this side, but first I want to make sure that this looks like it makes sense. Now this is too bright because it's not a highlight. This is reflected light. Let's write reflected light right here. Reflected. So this is the light that is shining off maybe the ground or off of an object somewhere, and it's shining back on here. And this happens in round objects like this, and it happens a lot in spheres too. So now I'm going to darken this up and go over everything on this side here. I don't want to darken this up too much because it looks pretty good for me right now. So that means you're going to make this area darker, but you got to make this darker too. What happens when you make round edges dark at the edges, it helps them look more 3D. So I'm going back and forth, making sure that I don't lose my reflected light area, because I want it to be visible, and then making sure it's even too. Now I want to darken up the edge just a little bit more to make it pop. So I'm trying to point what little point I do have on this pencil and carefully shade the edge, but I want it to blend in. This can be kind of tricky, guys, so take your time, try not to rush it. Now you should still be able to see that there's a lighter area in here, but it's still darker than the highlight area here. Alright, so we're going to do the same thing we did on this edge, where we're just trying to darken the edge to make it look round over here, but very, very light. Because most likely, it depends on where the light is, we have a highlight over here just a little bit. And so this is called using your artistic interpretation. There we go. So just very lightly, just enough to make it look like it's going away from us and it's rounded. Now this should also be gradual too, so the edge should be darker and it disappears into nothing. Now, like I said, I could probably work on these quite some time. And make sure everything is just perfect. But I don't have a picture of a cylinder in front of me to look at, so it's kind of hard to say, oh, that's perfect. I'm just kind of doing this from memory. Alright, the shadow. Now this is the tricky one, because depending on where the light is, and you have this rounded edge and then you have straight edges. So for now I'm just going to make the straight edge come this way. Now my hand is hitting my table, so I'm having a hard time making a straight line. And then just think of how round this might be in the back, so it might come up to there. So your back part of the shadow might be a little bit up from the bottom and then come straight out. And the top is rounded, so we could probably just guess that if it's coming straight from that side, that it's going to be rounded like that. It could be a little pushed out like that even, but we're not for sure without seeing an actual shadow picture. Alright, so then we're going to darken the underneath part here. It's usually darkest right there because it's the most light blocked right there. And then same thing, it's going to make it go a little bit lighter as it goes out away from the object. And now make sure that when you shade the other part of the shadow, that it doesn't get rid of your line for your cylinder. Now the goal is here to make it nice and smooth, get rid of any lines that you might have drew. They should just look like a one solid color or shade or value, whatever term you want to use. Basically a value. Nice and even. Now I have to go in and fill in some areas because I see some lines here and I'm trying to get rid of them with my shading. Which means I have to work back and forth, make sure this looks good, and then I go back over here, make sure that blends in better, and then go back and forth until I'm happy with everything. Alright, not too bad. Now we have 3 objects we've done so far today. Or not today, but we did these 2 today, and we did this one last time. Now what I want you to do, either on a separate piece of paper, which might be a good idea, is to draw these again on your own without following me and see how well you can do it. Alright?